When you flip on the evening news and see nations clashing over borders, trade deals, or ideology, do you ever stop and wonder what is actually going on beneath the surface? Like, is international politics just this slow, steady march toward global harmony and moral progress? Or is it, at its absolute core, just an endless, unyielding struggle for dominance? Today, we're going to challenge some of the most deeply held assumptions out there about how the world works. We're setting aside the wishful thinking, and we are going to look at the raw, unfiltered reality of international relations.
Welcome to this explainer. I am so thrilled to have you here. Our objective today is simple, but it is incredibly powerful. We're going to build a foundational, completely objective framework to analyze why nations act the exact way they do. We aren't here to judge, right? We're not here to dream up some utopian future. Instead, we're going to dissect the hidden engine of international relations, power politics. Because once you understand the concepts we're about to cover, I promise you, you will never look at a global conflict, a peace treaty, or honestly even a domestic political debate the same way ever again. Okay, let's dive into this by mapping out our intellectual journey today. Here's our agenda. First, we'll look at the nature of international politics. Second, defining true political power. Third, the illusion of permanent peace. Fourth, three patterns of power. And finally, status quo versus imperialism. All right, section 1, the nature of international politics. Listen, to truly understand international politics, we've got to strip away the surface-level distractions. We can't just look at recent historical events in total isolation, and we certainly can't reduce global politics to a set of legal rules or, United Nations institutions. We have to look at the deeper social forces at play. And our source text makes this really profound observation here. International events aren't just random, unique occurrences. Sure, a specific event happens only once, but they're driven by persistent, observable social forces. And where do those forces come from? Well, they're simply the product of human nature in action. Because human nature remains remarkably consistent under similar conditions, these social forces are going to manifest themselves in very similar ways. So, to chart the future wisely, we have to recognize these fundamental, repeating drives. Moving right along to section 2, defining true political power. So, international politics, like literally all politics, is a struggle for power. But what exactly do we mean when we use that word? The absolutely crucial point here is that political power is intangible. When we talk about power in this context, we don't mean power over nature or power over a machine. We mean a person's control over the minds and actions of other people. It is entirely a psychological relationship. A really great way to wrap your head around this is through a domestic analogy. Think about a labor leader, an industrialist, or a lobbyist. They exert political power purely insofar as they can influence the actions of others through persuasion, orders, or threats. It's all about shaping what another person, or in our case, another nation, decides to do. And this brings us to a distinction that people get wrong all the time. Political power absolutely must be distinguished from actual physical force. Now, armed strength as a threat? Yes, that's the most important material factor making for the political power of a nation. But when actual physical violence begins, when the bombs drop and the war actually starts, that literally signifies the abdication of political power. Think about it. The psychological relationship between two minds is completely replaced by a physical relationship between two bodies. The very moment you have to physically dominate someone's movements by force, the psychological element of the political relationship is completely lost. Which brings us to section 3, the illusion of permanent peace. So if this endless struggle for power is the fundamental reality, why do so many people, including highly educated, brilliant statesmen, historically misunderstand it? Why is there this persistent illusion of permanent peace? Well, back in 1943, U.S. Secretary of State Cordell Hull actually claimed that the new international organization would mean the end of power politics and usher in a new era of international collaboration. You see, during the 19th and 20th centuries, this utopian belief really took hold in the Western world. Liberals genuinely believed that with the victory of democracy and free trade, power politics would just vanish. Marxists, on the other hand, believed capitalism was the root of all international discord, and that international socialism would bring permanent peace. Both of these groups basically viewed the struggle for power as a temporary historical accident, something that could just be permanently engineered out of existence. But here is the realist reality check derived directly from our source material today. You simply cannot abolish the desire for power. The drives to live, to propagate, and to dominate are elemental, biopsychological drives that are common to all of humanity. The struggle for power is universal in time and space. The essence of international politics is exactly identical to its domestic counterpart. The source points out that we see this drive to dominate everywhere, right? in business competition, in labor disputes, in social clubs, and even in the family. I mean, think about the classic power struggle between a mother-in-law and her child's spouse. It's literally the exact same phenomenon, just operating under different conditions. All right, let's look at Section 4, 3 Patterns of Power. Because this struggle for power is so universal and undeniable, all political phenomena can actually be reduced to just 3 basic patterns. Look at how cleanly this organizes international relations. A political policy basically seeks to do one of 3 things: keep power, increase power, or demonstrate power. If a nation's foreign policy tends toward keeping power and they don't want to change the distribution of power in their favor, they're pursuing a policy of the status quo. If their policy aims at acquiring more power and seeking a favorable change in their power status, well, they pursue imperialism. And if a nation aims simply to demonstrate the power it already has, either to maintain it or increase it, it pursues a policy of prestige. And finally, Section 5, Status Quo versus Imperialism. We really need to deep dive into the 2 most critical and, frankly, most misunderstood categories of this framework, the status quo and imperialism. Let's start with the status quo. This concept actually derives from peace treaties, the status quo ante bellum, meaning the exact state of affairs before the war. A policy of the status quo fulfills the exact same function for international politics that conservatism performs in domestic affairs. It aims to lock in a specific distribution of power exactly as it exists at a particular moment in time. Usually, this gets codified at the end of a war in a peace settlement, and the nations who benefit from that settlement form defensive alliances to preserve it. Now, it's not opposed to any and all change, just change that would actively reverse the power relations. Okay, this slide is a real game changer because it totally dismantles what most of us think we know about imperialism. In popular usage today, imperialism has lost almost all concrete meaning, hasn't it? It's basically just become a swear word, a generic term of insult you throw at a foreign policy you don't happen to like. But scientifically speaking, it's none of those things. It is not just any increase in power. For example, if a dominant nation buys a small island to defend a canal, but leaves the overall global power structure totally intact, that is actually the status quo. And surprisingly, preserving an existing empire, like the British Empire in the late 19th century, trying to consolidate the land it had already won, is also a policy of the status quo, not imperialism in this dynamic sense. So here is the ethically neutral, objective definition we really must use to understand this clearly. Imperialism is a dynamic policy that aims to completely overthrow the status quo. It seeks a total reversal of power relations between nations. It is, at its heart, a process of disruption. By defining it this way, we aren't judging the moral motives of the statesmen involved. We are simply observing the actual character of the policy. If a policy seeks to tear down the existing hierarchy and place a brand new power at the top, that is imperialism. And that brings us to the end of our framework today, leaving us with a really crucial question for you to ponder. Now that you have this objective lens, stripping away all the rhetoric, the utopian ideals, and the legal jargon, how do you view the world? Next time you look at the headlines, when you see nations negotiating or fighting, I want you to ask yourself, are they trying to keep power, increase power, or demonstrate power? Are you watching a defense of the status quo, or are you watching the disruptive march of imperialism? Apply this framework, and the hidden engine of international politics will finally come into clear view. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and remember to keep questioning what you see.